I just came back from Pokemon Go Tour Unova LA in person at the Rose Bowl Stadium. I went to Go Tour last year for Sinnoh Tour, and I had a great time, so I knew I had to go to Unova Tour since I really love this region. It has so much Pokemon, so many cool Pokemon, so many good stuff. So I knew I wanted to go to this event again. And the fact that it's at the same venue, it's like, it was already a great venue last year. So I knew that this time I had to go all out once again. Did it deliver? Make sure to keep watching and find out. I am biased because I do live only a few hours away from the Rose Tour in Los Angeles. So when you hear my opinion, just make sure to keep that in mind. So I went to Friday day. My reasoning is usually Niantic messes up partway through and usually on their first day. So usually they give whoever shows up on the first day some rewards. But surprise, they did not do that. They really didn't have any like big mess ups. Like obviously I assume some people probably had issues, but nothing big enough where they had to go like, oh, sorry everyone, here's like some remote raid passes or something. No real big mess ups. So let me just walk through my Friday. Now, I expected going into the Rose Bowl. Last time I tried to go in like about an hour and a half early just so I had good parking, didn't have to worry too much about it. Last year when I went, the cars were lined up all the way around the Rose Bowl Stadium. So I had to go like around it to the side, up and around to get into line to eventually get parked. And it wasn't that bad afterwards, but this time I went at around the same time, no lines. No parking line. Obviously, there was a line to get in with people and stuff, but the actual parking was almost seamless. I showed them my QR code and they just brought me to where I want to go. Funny enough, they just drew a little F on my car, which was a little silly. I should also explain where I was staying at. I was staying in Burbank. Last year, I actually stayed somewhere else in Orange County and just drove longer, but thankfully, I was able to get a good hotel in Burbank, which I really recommend if it's available and if you're able to book early enough. Burbank is a place to go for the Rose Bowl Stadium, in my humble opinion, because Pasadena doesn't have a ton of hotels, and Burbank has a lot of good stuff for Pokemon Go players. But I'll get to there a little later. But anyway, I park right. I get in line, and also before I even get out my car, I see a whole bunch of big signs about the clear bag policy and the battery pack policy, or maybe one of them. They had something like this last year, but they're enforcing it more this year. Also, we got like the official, like, I guess, warning about the bag policy, the battery policy, like 2 days before the event. Thankfully, I had a plastic clear-ish, it was actually really colored and tinted bag that I got from TwitchCon, which is really awesome. And I was a little unsure if it would go through because it was very technicolor, futuristic, brightish color, so I wasn't sure if it would let me through, but thankfully they did let me through. I planned on just bringing my backpack, but after seeing the sign, I figured that maybe I shouldn't risk it. And I was also unsure about food, because usually they don't let you bring food or drinks, but I had a few snacks in the bottom of it and they just let me through fine. I wanted to bring a second battery, but I decided to just bring my one battery, and thankfully I was okay. I've heard people were able to get through with a second battery, but I've also heard some people have to go to a little check-in tent where, like, if you couldn't bring something in, you could leave it there and you could pick it up when you're about to leave. I didn't see the check-in tent myself, but I've heard it was there. I will say, in line with all the people, the staff or volunteers, they were kind of like pointing at people who are like, hey, you might not be able to bring all these snacks. And like, they were also doing this to people with like empty cans too. Like, I was talking to someone in my group who was like, they were trying to ding me about like an empty soda can, and they were like, it's empty, but they kept going back to this person even though they told them they're empty. Obviously they're just doing their job, but security went by pretty quickly, all things considered. We got our little wristband, and they actually let us into the park about 30 minutes early, so like 8:30. It starts at 9, and there's a few different entrances. I opted for the one on the side towards the golf course, and from what I've heard, that side was more lenient compared to the one going into the stadium. But once you go through security, you don't need to go through security again. So I went through the one on the golf course side both times, and didn't have many problems. I did overhear someone talking to the park staff. They were asking like, hey, and they told them like last year we didn't have this, we were okay, we had it more lenient, and the park staff was like, well, last year they messed up, we've had this policy the whole time. So obviously people knew, and thankfully most people seem to be prepared with clear bags and stuff. I did see a few people with backpacks. I don't know if it was like fully checked, or I don't know if they had to go through like a deeper inspection, but I wasn't looking too much about it. It was a little weird for me having to bring around my clear bag. I really should get a clear backpack for next time. When you picked your ticket, they had you choose like which like environment, which in-person event is divided into 4 like zones that are like lightly defined of like the season, spring, summer, fall, winter. And that affects what Pokemon you're gonna find. So I chose and I mainly hung out around the winter area because I really like a lot of the Pokemon there. There's Roggenrola, there were Axew, Drillbur, a whole bunch of good stuff over there. So I walked over to that area first, but you didn't have to start in the area on your ticket. Like you could do anywhere. I think it was just to get a sense of what people wanted the most. But I walked over there and thankfully it was the area with the best thing ever, which is the water fountain. I really wish they had more water fountains, and there's only like one water fountain, like one quote-unquote like hydration station in the whole tour. There wasn't really a line, and I don't think they ran out of water. Like, no, some people thought the water tasted bad, but I never had that issue both times that I went. But I start over there, game runs flawlessly, mostly. I did have to reset the game, I think 2 or 3 times throughout the whole like 6-ish hours I were there. But other than that, I didn't have any issues. But started on time, all the spawns popped up since I had the ticket. So about the gameplay itself, I feel like, and I know not everyone has this opinion, I felt that the overall event and the amount of Pokemon I encountered was great. Because Unova Dex is huge Pokedex, one of the biggest Pokedexes, if not the biggest, I don't know off the top of my head, but there were so many Pokemon, like going from zone to zone to zone. I was like, oh, this Pokemon, or that Pokemon, or that Pokemon. There was so much Pokemon there. It was really good. Like it could have been more diverse, because I know a lot of them were in eggs or in, I think, rockets or something, but still, they really took advantage of pretty much the entire dex, aside from legendaries, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But the in-person research went by super duper fast. I kind of wish it was a little bit longer so that I could have like gotten more stuff from it. But I did get the masterwork research from it, which was pretty nice. The raids, there's a difference with raids from this event and last year's. Last year's, all the raids were mainly in the golf course, which is the same as this year, but they were clustered together. So what they did was, last year's raids were Dialga and Palkia in their origin forms. So when some of them popped, they would be on one side of the park, they would all stop, and then they would pop on the other side of the park. So you had to literally walk back and forth, or sit down for like an extended amount of time if you wanted to like maximize your experience. Whereas here, there were about, I think, the same amount of raids, but they were a little more spread out. So you could kind of go in more like a circle. And I think the raid timers were like every 10 minutes. You had 10 minutes to go from raid, or maybe it was 20 minutes. I don't remember. But it was not that long. Basically still had to walk around a lot, but you could also sit down because the raids went through timers relatively quickly and get them that way. And they rotated between Black and White Kyurem plus Reshiram, Zekrom every hour or so. I will say, I know they did this with Necrozma, but having to do almost like 9 or 10 raids to get enough energy in order to fuse them, kind of a big ask. Like, they didn't really tell you how many you needed. They also didn't give you any energy for free. I feel like, considering you're there and that you're at the in-person event, you're doing what Niantic wants you to do, what they beg you to do. They want you to go to these super duper live events with a whole bunch of people. I feel like they could have given like, I don't know, like 500 of each for free. Not even like, they didn't even have to give like a full fusion, but they could have given out a little bit more. Like, come on. I mean, didn't matter for me because I ended up rating up like almost 100 over the course of the weekend. Another positive change is they had more food trucks since last year. Last year, they had food trucks in the lunch-ish area, plus additional food vendors in the stadium, which is super nice. This time they also added more food trucks in the golf course itself, which was really nice. They did also expand the park walkway in general. I don't know by how much, but it did feel bigger. There were like a few extra paths. You had a little bit more room to walk around, which was really appreciated because it gave trainers more space to spread out so we weren't bumping into each other, had more room to walk. It was very, very, very nice. I don't know if it was me or if I'm misremembering things, but I think it was harder to get to the stadium area than it was last year. Like, I remember this wide open like bridge. Like, there's like 3 or 4 bridges, but there was a really big bridge that I feel like they had people stationed there to stop you from going on this bridge. I don't know, maybe I just never looked at it at a time where someone was walking across, but I never saw anyone go across this big bridge. So I always saw 2 like volunteers standing at the edges of the bridge. So I feel like maybe that bridge was just blocked off. And I swear last year you could go across this bridge. I don't know if it was just me. I feel like they wanted you to go through like the smaller bridges, which is bad because the big bridge would have been really helpful in going to the stadium, to the golf course, back and forth. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you could go across this bridge, because I swear you couldn't go across this bridge, and I was too nervous to try. So outside the golf course, in the little like area between the golf course and the stadium where they had food trucks last year, they sold the food trucks last year, but they had a Ferris wheel this time, which was really, really cool. Apparently, you had to like reserve a time slot to actually go on this Ferris wheel, which yes, you could go on the Ferris wheel. I didn't go on the Ferris wheel because I did not have the time to figure that out. But that is a really nice touch considering it's the big thing in Mombasa City in Pokemon Black and White. I've heard like from what I've heard, it was like very high up, but really nice of them to do that. Like, I think it was free too. Speaking of free stuff, they also had carnival games. Like little, like 8 or so like carnival tents where you could just play little games. You couldn't win anything though. They're just there to do for like funsies and for like lore and world building. I feel like they should have given out like stickers or something, or pins or postcards. Like, we're not asking for a lot, just something to give you a reason to do them. But there were also not a ton of gyms at the stadium, probably because they want you to not just sit around in the stadium, which, by the way, great that you can sit inside the stadium in case you're tired. Like, there's no shade there, but you could sit in there on the stands. Really nice. Additionally, in the stadium, you could take pictures with blow-ups of the starters, Snivy, Tepig, and Oshawott. Which, funny enough, a nice little thing that makes personally me very happy was last year for Sinnoh Tour, they had not only the Sinnoh starters as like inflatables for pictures, but they also had the Hisui starters from Legends Arceus. And for whatever reason, they put Oshawott in the far corner of the stadium where no one could realistically find them. Like, you could find it, but it's so out of the way compared to the other starters. This poor little Oshawott was lonely. But it made me so happy to see Oshawott in the middle of the stadium with Snivy and Tepig getting the spotlight. That made me, like, unrealistically happy. Like, Oshawott is tied with Snivy for my favorite of the Unova starters. So it made me... And Oshawott was the first starter I personally picked in Black and White, so it makes me happy. What can this event do to improve next time? In my opinion, they gotta add more evolved Pokemon you can catch. Because I love just finding just evolved Pokemon. Even if it's something that's not super cool, it's still cool to find because you don't see them super often. And I really, really hope that they would have mighty Pokemon in this event. If you don't know what those are, in Pokemon Go Wild area, it was just super strong, fully evolved, high CP, and high IV Pokemon that you could just find. I really, really wish they had those or something like that again. Just imagine being able to just walk around and finding a wild Gigalith or something, or a wild Haxorus to catch. That would be so freaking awesome. But no, it's mainly just the same regular spawns again and again. There was still a cap on remote raids. I still was capped to 5, at least on Friday. Maybe it was different on Sunday, but I would have liked if there was a higher cap the entire weekend for ticket holders. Eggs are eggs, you know, like they're same things you see all the time. Personally, I wanted the 2-kilometer eggs because I really like Timber and Roggenrola. Of course, they pushed to 10-kilometer eggs because that's where the regional Pokemon like Sigilyph, Bouffalant are. So I know that's what they pushed. But personally, I wanted more 2-kilometer eggs. I also didn't really care for the research. Personally, I didn't really care for hunting the shiny Deerlings. I know a lot of people were, but I wish there was just a bigger variety of research. I know in Hoenn Tour, you could get research for rare candies or rare candy XL. I don't think they had those there. If they did, maybe I just missed them. But it was mainly just regionals and Deerling. I believe Deerling specifically was only really available through research in the park. Other than that, you really couldn't find many other legendaries. Like Pokemon Black and White have a ton of legendaries. But aside from like the big three, Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem, you couldn't really find them. Like you could do research for the genies, but that was it. Like the Sword Trio, not there. Keldeo, gone. Genesect is nowhere. I might have heard a rumor that Genesect was at the very, very end of the day, but I can't clarify that. But yeah, not really any legendaries walking around. Feel like they could have just put like a few Thundurus or Tornadus like randomly showing up sometime. Could be shiny, but nope, not there. And yeah, I really wish they just had more water fountains. Honestly, I think in general there should be more water fountains in the world. Because it gets hot in California. The big question people ask is it worth it to go to these events to play these big in-person Pokemon Go stuff? I always say, if you're willing to take a trip there and also do other things and not just go only for Pokemon Go, and if you think it's a reasonable amount of money and time to get there, I'd say go for it. Obviously, plan and think of other things to do so you're not just playing Pokemon Go all the time. Like, personally, I explored Burbank one day, and I found a really nice farmer's market and a whole bunch of nice stuff. Burbank is a really good place to play, especially if you go to the Santa Monica Pier for the city experience. There's tons of raids in the line. You can go back and forth. Lots of spawns. It's on the water, so you can get water spawns. You can get Wiglet, which I guess is something if you really want Wiglet. I will say, because it is a hyper popular place, you're gonna get the people you see at Times Square, like you're gonna get preachers. I got in a situation where there were freaking 4 people at once preaching, and I'm pretty sure they weren't related to each other, just screaming people big signs and megaphones. If you do have headphones or noise canceling headphones, highly recommend doing that if you just want to kind of play to yourself, go at your own pace, because that just blocks out a lot of it. But nice place to play, super crowded though, so just make sure you're aware of your surroundings. There's bathrooms. There is a water fountain at the higher edge of the park that I did not know on my first day, that I found thanks to a little app on my phone. So make sure you check it out before you go down onto the pier. That's my little hilly tip for you, if it's still there in the future, of course. I parked in a parking structure not too far, and it was literally only $5 for the weekend. So definitely check it out if you can. Shiny wise, I didn't go hard looking for shinies. I mainly looked for Pokemon that I cared about that were good for raids and gyms. I got roughly 40 something shinies. I also, funny enough, hatched a shiny Heatmore and a shiny Durant right after the other. I also got a shiny Unknown O and a shiny Unknown N. But other than that, I had a good time. Obviously, go if you're willing to go, if you want to go. Like, I always say, don't go just for the shinies, because like you're always going to be disappointed that you don't get enough shinies and stuff. But I also didn't go too hard shiny hunting, and I still got a lot just from having the Pokemon Go Plus run in the background and catching the stuff I wanted. But that was my Pokemon Go Unova Tour experience. I really am unsure how they're gonna do Kalos Tour next year. If they announce a whole bunch of stuff in Legends ZA, they better announce a lot of legendaries, because there are not many legendaries to catch in Kalos. There's literally just the 3 and the mythicals. I have a good feeling, and I'm gonna say it now, that Xerneas and Yveltal are gonna get some sort of power-up or some sort of stronger form to allow people to catch them and go. Maybe some origin form of some kind. That's just my hunch that's gonna happen, and maybe they'll just bring all the megas for Kalos Tour. Or maybe there won't be a Kalos Tour, and they'll just do Kanto Tour Part 2, Electro Boogaloo, baby! It's their 30th anniversary, and they're probably going to do something bananas for that. Which, actually, now that I think about it, it's probably very likely. They're probably not going to be doing Kalos Tour for their 30th, as much as cool as Kalos is. That's my review of Go Tour LA. I had a great time. I would say if you're close-ish to the area and are willing to drive there, make a weekend out of it, explore, I'd say go for it. And that goes to really all the live in-person events. If you like this video, make sure to leave a comment, talk about if you would ever go to a Pokemon Go Tour, live event, anything like that, and or your favorite Pokemon. Thank you so much for watching.